Welcome to What's Cooking with the Cookware and Bakeware Alliance. The CBA supplies the industry with standards, connections, and solutions. This podcast features stories from our members and partners. Our goal is to share resources and information across the industry for consumers, retailers, manufacturers, and more. To learn more about becoming a member of the CBA, visit cookwareandbakeware.org.
Welcome to the What's Cooking with the CBA podcast series. Our podcast, the What's Cooking with the CBA, is a special feature this year called Stronger Together. This special series celebrates our members, their contributions to the industry, the community, and always dedicated to creating safe consumer products. Our members are the industry leaders, and I'm so happy to be joined today by SGS. SGS is our lab partner, and today we're talking with Scott Nesson, Director of Sales and Business Development, Piyush Shah, Director and Lab Manager for Hardlines, and Melanie Schubert, our main CBA contact and technical expert in chemistry and food contact materials. I'd love to take a minute and just kind of go around the room or the Zoom call and have everybody introduce themselves. Scott, would you like to kick it off?
Sure. So thank you, Fran. Thank you for inviting us to the podcast. So I'm Scott Nesson. I'm the Director of Sales and Business Development here at SGS North America. We're a global organization and work on the international platform as well. And I'll get more into what SGS does during our conversation.
Excellent. Piyush, you want to let us know about yourself?
Hi, my name is Piyush Shah, and I am a technical director for toys, juvenile products, and many other consumer products. I'm also a lab manager, which I manage the lab that tests these products, and I have been with SGS for 25 years now.
Wow, that's amazing. And Melanie?
Yeah, so I'm Melanie. I'm with SGS for over a year and overall in the consumer product testing space for over 10 years. And as you were saying, I focus on restricted chemicals and food contact testing.
Thank you. Well, I'm excited to have this call today. I want to mention to our listeners that also SGS joined us in 2022, and they're a part of celebration of our expansion in our 100-year celebration last year. So I'm excited to do this podcast today. So Scott, I'm gonna go to you, and could you tell us a little bit more about SGS, who you are, what you do?
Sure. So hopefully many of our fellow members know who we are, but just in a quick who we are. So SGS is a globally trusted third-party service provider. And what does that mean to the CBA members? Well, as a leading testing, inspection, and certification company, we can provide that trust between you and your clients or the public, and your products meet or exceed the regulatory and any claim verifications. And we also provide all the services required to meet the CBA seal.
That's incredible. I'm very familiar with SGS from my product days. So could you actually dive into a little bit about the history of the company?
Sure. The history it's long and rich. And I'm going to give you a quick overarching history and how we specifically started in the food contact and physical mechanical testing as it relates to the CBA members. So basically, when you look at it, SGS started, we were an inspection house for grain on the docks way back in 1878. And that goes all the way back to Rouen, France. And the whole idea of SGS in the very beginning was to protect buyers and sellers as they were shipping goods globally. So again, it's that trust but verify. So our full name was adopted in 1919, which is Société Générale de Surveillance. Well, that's a mouthful. And I think in the 11 years I'm here, I've said that now 5 times. But really, we're known globally as SGS. And we've grown from our early stages with the inspections, which is one of our core businesses still today, to multiple business sectors. So talking to you today, Melanie, Piyush, and myself represent the Hardlines division of our consumer products, and we began offering services in the middle of the last century. We have dedicated teams in other business sectors like oil and gas, chemical, minerals, government institutions. But in the mid-90s, our Hong Kong and Germany labs were regulatory and claim certification on food contact materials, and that included the cookware. We added China, Taiwan, Korea with KFDA, and our U.S. labs, all by the year 2000. And recently we've upgraded our USA lab with all new physical and mechanical testing lab equipment, which Piyush will get into a little bit later. And we're expanding our chemistry lab capability. We've added EU requirements to our chem labs on metals and ceramics, and all in an effort to make easy access to new markets to the cookware and bakeware community. So what does this mean for the CBA members? It can be broken down to 3 basic categories: testing, inspections, and audits. Food contact certification marks. If you claim BPA free, we can test it. If you have a claim that pan can go in an oven, we can verify. And that's it in a nutshell. We're here to help and to be that service provider to help the CBA members.
That's incredible. So you covered there the one. I love that there's a long history there, just like the CBA. That's incredible. That is actually much older than the CBA, in fact. And
yeah.
That's a powerful, longevity is a powerful statement in itself, especially in this industry. You touched on the global network where you operate. You touched on key areas of that global network. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on the global network?
Well, when we talk about the global network, we have, in case anybody doesn't realize, 96,000 employees globally. It is huge. We have 2,400 offices and labs globally. And with that 140 years of innovation and support, we're here to support you. But when you look specifically for food contact labs, okay, we have 30 labs globally. So is it 140 for the CBA members? It may or may not be, because many of your members may be doing other products outside of just cookware or food. We're there for everything. But with the 30 labs for food contact, it's spread out between the following regions. It's Asia, it's Europe, it's North America, and South America. So again, where you're producing, we try to be there to help you.
That's incredible. That's such an important part of the process, is that your presence globally are in the key areas where cookware and bakeware companies need you. We usually in these series, so I'd love to just detour for a second. We talk about how our members contribute to the community. Can you touch on that for what SGS does?
Sure. SGS is very proud of what we do and our contributions to the community. We provide time for our employees globally to volunteer in the community. And many of our employees, they work in food banks. They help clean up the community. We're doing general volunteering in local communities. And that's besides providing that best-in-class service to our clients with our 2 performance labs. So besides doing community work, we're also helping the CBA community with helping them make better products and with performance, helping them with their performance. And in that aspect, we've even set up we have 2 robots that clients can engage to use fit for life type of testing as well.
Wow. That's very advanced. That's impressive. Speaking of the members, are there specific services you want our members to know about regarding their compliance and quality assurance needs?
Absolutely. Our services that we support are manufacturers and retailers' requirements, and it starts from the concept to your finished products. We can handle performance and safety, material composition analysis, which is so important. If you want to make sure you don't have any PFAS or something like that. We do overall migration, extractive tests, specific migrations, total content, any other regulatory mandatory testing on a global level. We can handle you with all your CalProp 65 testing. No manufacturer wants to get caught up in a CalProp 65 lawsuit. So we try to protect you so you know what your materials are going into your product. And if you have any marketing and performance claims, we do that as well. Besides, as I mentioned before, that certification for the CBA, which we can help do the testing for their certification. And we also have a full brand protection and performance testing lab. So when you're talking about testing to CBA standards, adding CBA seal to your product, you can use a trusted third party like SGS, and you get a report as well.
So can you share a little bit more about your what kind of inspection and audit services you offer that our members might need to know about?
Oh, sure. Again, we're such a big company and we're there's so many different services that we offer. When you're talking about inspections and audit services, one of the first things that always comes to mind, especially in today's market, a lot of your manufacturers may be looking for new manufacturing or moving to new markets for manufacturing. So we do things like doing factory audits, pre-audits, quality management service audits, factory assessments, all at different levels depending on your client's comfort level or CBA members' comfort level with who they're doing business with. If they're all of a sudden moving into, they've always done business, as an example, China, and they never did business in India, they want to check who is that factory and can they produce what they're doing. So besides the factory assessments or audits or QMS audits, and then we also can help with the inspections. And what kind of inspections are those? Well, we can do pre-production inspections, production inspections, your final random inspections, and we go all the way up to your loading inspections. Again, it's that trust but verify. Not everybody does every inspection. The most common is final random. Second most common is your loading inspections, but we do have people that need either pre-production or production, especially if there's a new production line going up there or there's an issue that they find in the final random. They want to go back in the production cycle to see where it is. And that's where SGS can help.
That's an impressive step. I've been in product for my whole career, and I always knew of SGS for the testing part, didn't know about the inspection and audit services, and what an incredible and powerful tool to have. So I always had a team an agent or a team that worked for me overseas. What a great partnership they could have if they had this backup audit from SGS to compare their findings to. What a way to validate or verify what a product team is finding in a factory. That's an incredible service.
Great. Thank you, Fran. It absolutely is. And we have helped so many factories and so many clients throughout the years with exactly what you're talking about. It's just verifying. We're not saying don't use who you normally use. What we're saying is we're an added value.
Exactly. And that's so important. And there's so much to keep on top of nowadays, which kind of brings me to some of your other services, the SGS mechanical services. So Piyush, I'd love to ask you, what tests are you currently able to perform in those services?
So for cookware, we are able to perform almost all the tests that are listed in the CBA manual. We are able to do non-stick coating testing, the abrasion tests. We are able to conduct handle strength testing, flatness of the pan, the torque resistance of the handles. So all the physical tests involved with cookware, we have capabilities for. For the bakeware side, we have ovens right in the lab. We are able to validate claims for the temperature sustainability of product. We are able to assess the product after it has gone through the oven cooking cycle to ensure that there are no abnormalities or any peeling of coating, etc. On the cookware side, we have 3 to 4 different types of cooktops. So we have an induction cooktop, a gas range, an electric range with the coil setup, and then a smooth cooktop electric range. So depending on what our clients need, we are able to provide them the exact cooktop for their products, or we can test a single product on all different types of cooktops. In these days, many of the cookwares, the packaging of cookware do have different symbols of the type of cooktops that can be used with the product. And of course, we are able to do that claim validation.
That's incredible. I love that the 4 different cooktops and the ovens right in the labs. That's such a critical part of the construction and understanding of the performance of the products. Are you able to test to other requirements like EU?
So within the SGS network, yes, we are. Within the US laboratories, we don't have capabilities just because the demand, the request for testing is so little. that it wasn't feasible to get those capabilities in the US laboratory.
But you can do it in your European.
Absolutely, yes. We are able to do it in the labs in Germany, in China. They are able to test to the EU requirements.
Excellent. So continuing on the idea of global requirements, can you test to other global standards like GB in China?
So let me take that one. It's Scott. So, Fran, yes, we can test to global requirements when it comes to the food contact material and physical mechanical around the world. We do use many of our labs around the world. Not everything is available in the U.S. Like our GB standards would be tested in Shanghai. We can also test to Australia, New Zealand, European standards, as Piyush had said, and Melanie will get into some of the chemical aspect as well. So, but the answer is yes, we can test globally to almost every standard around the world, and we're approved to, including the ISO standards.
That's fantastic. One of the reasons I bring it up is I really wanted this part to stress that just because you're US compliant doesn't mean you're EU compliant, doesn't mean you're GP compliant. So you need to make sure that you're asking your partners like SGS, make sure they know where you're selling your products and what labs that they should be working with. Because that's unfortunately an assumption I often hear. Well, I passed the US, shouldn't I automatically pass the EU? One of the criteria I want to stress to members and new members or who might be just expanding to other global markets, make sure you say to SGS every place you're selling or going to be selling, because you'll need to cover all those standards.
Exactly. That's exactly right, Fran. And in my 11 years here, I hear the same thing like you did, or I hear it the other way is, oh, well, I meet the EU standards. Don't I automatically pass the US standards? And I'm like, no, FDA is a federal regulation and CDA is actually a Canadian regulation. So, you got to make sure that we understand all the countries.
Right, exactly. All right. Well, Melanie, we mentioned food contact several times, and regarding chemical and food contact, that's where your specialty comes in. And I know that firsthand from the subcommittees that you help on with the engineering standards. So thank you for your time. I'd love to talk about food contact right now. And obviously, cookware and bakeware products typically come into contact with food. Can you tell us a little bit more about what manufacturers need to know about food contact compliance?
So I wanted to start to just go a little bit into the general requirements and how food contact testing works in general. So in basically all the markets, food contact compliance you can see as consisting of two levels. The first level are those composition requirements, where basically any regulation, but those are also market specific. They provide a positive list of substances which are allowed to use in a certain material. And so you can only use substances from that substance list and from the positive list, and then any other substance is not allowed to be added into the food contact material. And the second level are basically the test requirements. So where you typically on the final product, but there are some exceptions to it, for example, under the US FDA, but typically the testing is done on the final product. And also something to understand for food contact, the testing is mostly done as migration testing, which is different from the general chemical testing you would know, for example, as under the CPSC, let's say total lead. So for the total amount of a chemical in the material, so we are looking what is in the material. As opposed for migration testing, we're not so much interested, how much of the substance is in the material, but we want to know how much of the substance is leaching into the food. So this is the whole concern for food contact, the concern really is the food, and we want to make sure certain substances do not leach out from the food contact material into the food.
It is a very complex topic, and I'm always impressed by those that manage these areas, because just one read into the FDA food contact regulations can be overwhelming.
I know, they are hard to read, I know. It's
really important to have a partner like SGS to understand that. For what little I know and remember from my previous days, even an ingredient can have a limit with a percent. So while it is allowed to be used, It's allowed to be included. It might be on the positive list, but it can only be used up to 8%, or it can only be used.
Exactly.
And to keep up with those lists, you need a good partner. You can, and it goes back to just like the factory audits. It allows your internal teams to have that trusted partner to go to and say, verify what I know, verify what I'm doing. And it's so important because right now, more than ever, it's not only just about what might be happening in legislation or things like that, like Prop 65 and all that. It's also about the consumer and what they're aware of, what they know, and to say, hey, we've had this validated and checked with SGS, with this, with this history company. It sends a great message to the consumer too, which is who we have to make sure that we're protecting. How can SGS assist in all of this food contact compliance process?
Yeah, so we can definitely support in that process. So just going back to the 2 levels I explained. So for the composition requirement, that's something which is typically done via declarations along the supply chain. So that can be required by regulation, for example, in the EU, where it's like a regulatory requirement to pass those declarations along the supply chain, and only substances which are on the approved list have been added. In the US, under the FDA, for example, there's such a regulatory requirement, but it's still like your duty to make sure if you buy a material for food contact to inquire with your supplier that the material you are buying is food grade for that certain market, and be really specific about that. So that's a process where we as a lab typically are not involved, but then we will get heavily involved when it comes to the testing portion of it. So as Scott was already saying, we have capability for compliance testing for all the major markets like US FDA, Canada, EU, and also going down to the EU member state levels, because there can be an added layer like France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, also covering like many Asian countries, like as you were saying, China, Chile, Korea, Japan, Thailand, India, and also South America. So we also can do testing against Mercosur. And so what typically happens, and like you guys already mentioned that, so a client will come to us and provide the product designation. Also really helpful if you give us a picture of the product so we have an idea, what it looks like, and then share with us what's the food contact material. So be really specific about that. So just not saying, okay, that's like a non-stick coating, but, saying, okay, that's like a PTFE non-stick coating, or that's a ceramic non-stick coating. Or if you have stainless steel, what kind of grade of stainless steel that is. Or if the product is more complex, like electrical products, like you have a blender or a coffee maker, then we would need a BOM, which is listing out all the components with the specific material designation of those components and identification of the food contact components. Then, sometimes we will still have to ask some clarification questions, and we will get back to you. So let's say, for example, for US FDA, if you tell us, oh, the material is PP, polypropylene, we will get back to you and, ask, is it like a homo or a copolymer? Or if you want to do testing for the EU, we might get, we will clarify with you, do you just want to do EU general or also EU member states? And then we will provide you a quote from there. And Scott already mentioned the test locations do also are covered on a global level. So we can do testing in US, in Fairfield, which is right now focused on US FDA testing, but we also in the process of extending to EU. So we can do for ceramic, glass, and metal. We can do also EU testing in Fairfield right now. And then our major hub for food contact testing is in China, Hong Kong. So they can basically cover all the global regulations, but also other locations like Thailand, Vietnam, India, EU test labs in France and Germany, and also test labs in South America. And then also just to reiterate on the point you mentioned, it's really important to understand that those legislations are market specific. So as you and Scott mentioned, so if you are compliant in the EU, that will most likely mean that this compliance does not cover the US or other markets. There are like small exceptions to it, but there's an overlap, but this is like 1% of it, and 99% it's like really different.
It is a very complex issue, and having the right partner is key, like SGS. What other services related to chemical testing does SGS offer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we definitely also outside of the food contact, which is basically you can see as a part of like the chemical testing, like a specific part, but we can also do all the general chemical testing, which are not specific to food contact. For example, we already talked about Prop 65. We can do testing against that or other US state regulations. We can test to EU REACH, for example, against the Annex 17, or also do a screening for the SVHC candidate list. And then, of course, our favorite topic right now is is PFAS. So we just actually published a leaflet on PFAS explaining our test options, and so we added it to our member directory on the CBA website, so you can access that there if you're interested. And also, we were giving a webinar on PFAS the end of last year, so we also uploaded a recording of the PFAS webinar, the slides, and the Q&A report to our member directory, so you can also access it from there if you really want to dive deeper into the whole PFAS topic. So we can do definitely testing for PFAS, but also something I wanted to mention. So cookware is always a little bit special in the PFAS regulatory world. If you look at most other type of products, like food packaging or textiles, like PFAS is just outright banned by many, for example, US states right now. So then we would do like total fluorine testing and, PFAS target screening. For cookware, it's a little different because right now the requirements are specific to labeling. And so something I wanted to mention, so for PFAS and cookware, it's a special regulatory area right now. So if you look into PFAS and other product categories, like for example, food packaging or textiles, so PFAS is just outright banned by many US states right now. So then our test approach would be like, testing for total fluorine and doing PFAS target analysis. For PFAS and cookware, there are right now labeling requirements against designated list. So here testing is limited, and really like you would need to get the gist of the information and what chemicals needs to be labeled via disclosure from your manufacturer.
That is one, we could do several podcasts on that topic. And we have a lot of information. And to those listening, Melanie is a key part of that team. So thank you, as always, for your time. And just to say that is one of the most amazing parts of the CBA is the engagement of our members, the contribution of their expertise to these issues where we offer education and advocacy. So you're getting to hear one of our senior experts live and in person on this podcast. Scott, I'd love to come back to you and talk about, before we wrap up, the SGS certification services. Can you share more about what kind of services SGS offers with regards to certification?
Absolutely. And thank you for coming back to me. And just before we do move into certification, I would like to just thank Melanie and Piyush as well for their great contributions here. And just to also bring up one small topic is the fact that when we're talking about PFAS, SGS is the only major lab today who actually tests in the USA for PFAS. So that's an important distinction. I know other labs are working on it, but we actually are testing it today. So that was an important distinction as well. And that's thanks to Melanie, very much part. So she is an expert in PFAS. When it comes to certifications, there are 3 types of certifications that are basically required when you're talking certifications. And SGS can help with all 3. There's mandatory certifications, there are voluntary compliances, and then there's voluntary certifications. So just to make sure that you understand the 3 distinctions, what's a mandatory certification? Well, an example would be if you're going to Europe and you need or selling PPE, which is personal protection. CE is a mandatory certification where in Europe you may be able to use a CE for a toy where that is actually what's mandatory is to be compliant, not certified. So there's a little bit of a difference between a certification and compliance. Certain areas you need to be compliant. Certain you actually need a certification where you actually need a third-party company to actually verify the seal and have the certification. That would be on items like an electronic product. If if you're doing small appliances that SGS can also help you with on a global level. So voluntary, so that's mandatory, be like a electronic appliance, could be PPE for Europe. A voluntary compliance would be something where you're meeting the regulation, you're getting a test report from a third party verified. Cybersecurity would be a voluntary compliance. It's not mandatory yet. And there is SGS certifications as well for food contact material, which also complement that CBA mark for your physical mechanical. So if you're hitting or meeting some of your chemical aspects as well, we can help with that, or your packaging, or your recyclability. Again, voluntary certifications. It's that green mark. It's the environmental certifications as well. So, or it could be ISTA packaging, or it could be something that's going to save you money or help you with your marketing. It could be a voluntary certification. So there are 3 different types.
That's impressive. I think what I'm hearing through this whole podcast is that members can work with you on any need from start to finish, whether it's that factory verification, the beginning when they're starting a new product, to the life of the product, to then once the product's established, what needs to happen in the different global markets around the world. That is a powerful partner to have.
Absolutely. And thank you for that, because that does sum up exactly what SGS, when engaged, can help a client or help a member all the way through the process.
It has been an absolute pleasure talking with the 3 of you today. This is incredible. I can't wait to get this podcast up because there's a lot for our members to know. And I really appreciate your time, all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Fran.
Thank you, Fran.
Thank you, Fran.
You've been listening to What's Cooking with the Cookware and Bakeware Alliance. For more resources about the cookware and bakeware industry and information about becoming a member, visit our website, cookwareandbakeware.org.